All right, ladies and gentlemen around the Delaware Valley, welcome to Top Lawyer with Sean Quinn here on WWDB Talk 860. We've got an awesome show. Taylor Cohen of Stern Cohen is in the house. And lots going on, man. I'll tell you, and I'm going to bring our host in, Sean Quinn. What a great time of year, and what a great time to be in Philadelphia, Sean.
What a time to be alive, Joe. Listen, my office is at 2nd and Walnut, right? So I feel like I'm in the epicenter of all things. Pretty amazing this time of year in Philly. Although except when you're driving to my office and all the roads are closed, and all the visitors have no idea where they're going and they're just walking into traffic. I mean, if we put those things aside, I don't know if you've been in Old City or Society Hill in the past couple weeks. We got the glow up. Sidewalks are repaired. Bike lanes are open. The beautification has happened. Like the first bank right across the street from the Revolutionary Museum right there. Got to go up. We got flags everywhere. It looks pretty awesome. And that's just part of the glow up for Philly.
Well, what's interesting is I'm a hypocrite. I do the labor radio, and so I'm advocating for all the work and all. Let's bring it all here. But then when I'm in traffic, okay, and all that construction's going on, I'm like, Jesus. But the end results are incredible. By the way, what's going on this weekend? Is there any special holidays, or is it just
listen,
Go ahead.
America's 250 years old. Despite efforts to burn down the country, we have survived it, and we've made it to the 250th anniversary. So it's going to be pretty darn cool. Listen, no one pats ourselves on the back quite like Americans. We are good at that.
It's warranted.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we are good. We are good at celebrating ourselves, and we've earned this. And I hope that people can appreciate and take in a little bit of history and really kind of reflect on what it means to be an American. Don't get caught up into all the politics of it. Just, this is a great country. Listen, and the fact that it's coinciding with a couple of things. One, we have the FIFA World Cup going on, and I know we're going to touch upon that, as well as, my second favorite holiday after the 4th of July, and that is the MLB All-Star Game, and happen to be hosting that in Philly. So
wow,
literally it's between today and we've already had a bunch of World Cup games in Philadelphia already. We're going to have a round of 16 game next week. And then the week after, we have the all MLB Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, HBCU Swingman Classic. A lot of cool things happening in Philly. But Joe, we're going to get into that stuff, but we wouldn't be doing our jobs unless we talked a little bit about what the show is, aside from the sports talk aspect of the show, because there is a sports talk aspect of the show. But and I obviously I'm wearing my Phillies branded gear today. But listen, part of what we do on this show is give an opportunity for lawyers in our community that people may not know, their name and their face. People get bombarded with TV advertisements and billboards, and Taylor's name is on a couple of those billboards in town. So, but our sometimes our mugs and our faces are not on all those billboards, and a lot of times when you have billboards, those are figureheads only, right? And we know which firms are figureheads only and not actually working lawyers who are actually moving cases. Taylor just happens to be on the billboard by name, and he actually is a working lawyer. So it's like a double win. And Taylor Cohen is our guest today. He's a partner at the Philadelphia-based firm of Stern Cohen. They are some of the premier workers' compensation and Social Security disability. And Taylor, I think do you guys do veterans benefits as well?
Just workers' comp assistant.
Yeah. So they're one of the premier shops here based in the Philadelphia area, and we have some very good comp firms in this region, and they're one of the best. Taylor has he's partners with Dave Stern. Dave is already a guest on the show, so I'm sure he's going to compare notes later and see who did a better job. And
well, he did. I heard there was a fight between the two of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, Dave's a baseball guy.
What's that?
Just Dave's a baseball guy. Tell him his blue hens stink, and he'll be fine. But listen, he's partners with Dave Stern, somebody I've known for a long time. This is Taylor and I's first time getting together. But listen, Taylor's got all the credentials. He's a great workers' compensation lawyer. He's been recognized. I think it's up to 8 or 9 times now by super lawyers. He's still got the rising star. He hasn't gotten old enough yet to quite be like an old head where we phase out of the rising stars. It's coming for you, buddy. But listen, we are super excited to bring Taylor Cohen on the show today. Welcome aboard, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate all the nice things you said. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the platform to come on and talk about what we do. Also talk Philly sports. Born and bred in Philadelphia, so I'm a big Philly sports guy.
Yeah.
And then I'll have to say I'm fine coming second place to Dave. He's usually better at this than me. But as a Penn State student athlete, I'm very much anti-blue hens as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as you should be. It's funny. I was actually thinking about having you on this week, and while you'll laugh as to why I was laughing about doing these things, I was neck deep in a motion for summary judgment response. And for those out there that don't know what that is, that's where somebody's trying to dismiss my client's case. And I don't always have to do those motions. I'm not the one that's usually at this stage of my career who's prepping the briefs, but this is a monster case. It's a construction worker who fell. He was doing some general cleanup on a work site. Big construction project with general contractors, subs across the board. And he was doing general cleanup when the carpentry contractor who was lowering metal beams from a first floor down to a basement in what was going to eventually be an elevator shaft. They were just temporarily covered. These guys just put like a thin piece of corrugated metal over this thing and wrote the word hole on it. Wasn't secure, wasn't TAPCON down, no railing systems around this thing. And this guy who didn't speak English, didn't even know what the word hole meant, lifted the thing to do some cleanup and fell down, multiple injuries.
Wow.
And horrible. But listen to this. But when you sue a general contractor in Pennsylvania, they have certain protections called statutory employer. So what happens in every one of these cases is there's the GC, who was, in our opinion, clearly negligent, in the opinion of our expert, clearly negligent, in addition to the subcontractor who was negligent. But they have this nice little tool called the statutory employer defense, where they say, hey, statutory employer was intended to protect my client's employer. Okay. Not the GC. But this is the state of law. So as I'm going through this, I'm sitting here as a construction accident lawyer, doing this work, and it has massive connection and interplay to the workers' compensation system. So, I don't do Taylor's work, and Taylor doesn't do my work. We have kind of like a coexistence where we kind of run parallel tracks to help the injured worker. And I think it's one of the things that isn't really explained that well. When work injuries happen, I always say every time you have a work injury, you always have a case for Taylor, or should if they have insurance. And sometimes those cases will also have somebody else that you can go after, what we call a third party claim. But Taylor, I'll pass the ball to you and talk about that. That's a pretty common situation that we run into, and I know your firm does a really good job of identifying potential third-party cases. So maybe take you through some of that interplay of an all too common situation where somebody comes to you and you're like, oh, we might not be the end of the road for you. You might have something else.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially with construction accidents, a lot of times, especially in the Pennsylvania area, there's, like you said, general contractors, subcontractors, so many different entities on the job site that there's usually someone else to go after for a third-party lawsuit. So when we talk to a potential client initially about their work injury, we're also looking for a third-party case to send over to a firm like Sean's. Workers' comp's a little different in that we don't have to show negligence. We have to show that you were an employee, that you got hurt at work, and you're on it. But on these job site cases, there's not always, but there's a lot of sloppy safety concerns, which it sounds like happened in your case, Sean. So there's different entities to go after. Also, there are times where there's only one entity on the job site, but the way they set up their corporation, they may pay management separately than they pay, the rank and file workers. That's another avenue where we may be able to go after the setup of the management through a third-party lawsuit. There's also products liability cases. A product was made incorrectly that caused the accident. You go after the notion that an entity that made that product negligently. So, there's always things to look into for a third-party for the lawsuit that we're doing, initially when we first talk to the client, and then throughout the case if something comes up in the discovery process.
Yeah. I mean, we get that just on that point about that thing. One of the things I always tell guys that have work injuries to look for is machine guarding. That's the that area that we often see is somebody has either, maybe it's an employer or a coworker has removed a guard in order to improve like the efficiency on the job, and employers turn a blind eye. But it's like, why was it designed to be removed in the first place? So guys like me have to identify and spot those things. Joe, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's okay, because it one of the things, and this is a third area, but you have worker misclassification. You have a lot of these jobs where, and I advocate on behalf of the labor community, but at the same time, not every job's a union job. Which we do know is that, well, at least with union jobs, you have job stewards, and you have safety. With OSHA being defunded, obviously there's some issues there, but at the same time, you guys are kind of mentioning that it's not always that obvious when somebody gets injured, and who are they working for? Sean. Well, I'll ask Taylor first.
Yeah.
When you get a workers' comp, somebody gets injured, okay, it's just amazing how bad people can get screwed. So you think about misclassification. We've had jobs, plenty of jobs, big ones, where not typically massive ones, but like, and I'm thinking of one that was a massively popular one, and in Center City, Philly, where they would guys working on 1099s. They were subcontractors, all had to be in at the same time, uniform, working without breaks and all that stuff. And so what happens in that situation? I can only imagine at that point where there are potential for third-party cases and work comp cases that literally are. Where do you take that case, Taylor? Somebody comes in, they're working on one of these jobs, and making them a subcontractor now takes the general out of the work comp discussion and the third party discussion. How do you look at that situation and see, and then obviously investigate it for third party as well?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times, people will call our office and say, I don't have a work comp claim because I'm paid on a 1099 or I'm a contractor. But just because you're paid that way, or your employer's telling you you're an independent contractor, it's not the case for workers' comp purposes. It's more about control. Do they tell you to show up at a certain time? Do they dictate where you're showing up? Do they provide the tools? Do they control the work? And then when there's a scenario where there's multiple subcontractors, or it's a job site with different entities, or if they're misclassifying, I'll send it over to a firm like Sean's just to look at it, because they may see something I'm not seeing, and I'd rather have someone who's an expert in that area take a look and say, there's nothing here, or, hey, there's something here to run with as well.
Yeah. So we see this a lot with drivers, right? Yes. Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, truck drivers, even delivery men. They're trying to But it's like I laugh. I sometimes laugh about and I think juries, when they get these cases, are actually holding, as you're actually the agent. Like, you think about the Uber driver, right? The Uber driver out there gets that assignment. He's on a platform controlled by Uber. He is being told which way to go by Uber. He's being told how much he's being paid for that job. He's under literally, he's not on his own picking up things. They have complete control. Plus, they monitor your speed. They have data and analytics that are showing how safe you're driving, your abrupt stops. They give feedback on those things. So, far cry from a true independent contractor. And I think when juries actually get evidence on these things, they're like, you're not an independent contractor. You're really an employee of this company, and who should have been entitled. And I know there's a lot of layers that sometimes go through on those to kind of find those things. But yeah, misclassification is definitely an issue that we run into.
Yeah, you guys were talking about faulty products, okay, machinery, and I think that when you have this discussion, what's vitally important, especially for our listeners, is the importance of having experts, attorneys that are, obviously the most experienced in work injuries and of course third party. But one of the things that I can only imagine how many people have gone their own route and not found a workers' compensation specialist or a third-party specialist who specializes. How often do faulty products get overlooked on a work injury? I'll ask Taylor and then Sean if you'll jump in.
Yeah, pretty frequently. I actually have one right now where a garage door came down on someone's head. And, we're looking into the work comp component because he got hurt at work. And, the original fault was someone pressed the button and the garage door came down. But turns out through the discovery process, no one pressed that button. The garage door came down on its own. Something went on internally. So we need someone to look at that to see, what caused that issue with the garage to come down unexpectedly without anyone pressing the button. So it happens all the time.
Sean?
Yeah, let me jump in on that, because I think one of the challenges, I think it's sort of like malpractice, okay? And I give you kind of the analogy. And a lot of times clients will come to you with a medical malpractice claim, and it might be a clear deviation. They might have really mistake. And the question is it going to be worth it to pursue that claim? And really, because frankly, there's not that many malpractice lawyers, particularly in Philadelphia, but even across the country, that are touching cases that they don't value at least $500,000 or more. And products liability is very similar. So there's a lot of folks that come to us with workplace injuries. There's clearly either something wrong or like a maintenance issue with this machine, but sometimes you got to go back and do the business side of it and say, the juice is not going to be worth the squeeze here, because what we know is products liability cases are, one, time consuming, two, extremely expensive, and manufacturers will dig in their heels before they ever concede that their design was defective, that the machine was defective. I will often have money on the street, anywhere from 50 to 100 grand, just before I get to trial on a case like that. So, sometimes we have to tell clients that have a clear workers' comp injury and a potential third-party claim against a product manufacturer, but sometimes their injuries are not going to be worth going that extra mile. So it's kind of like those, we have to turn down what would be on their face meritorious malpractice cases, because the proverbial thing is, the juice is not going to be worth the squeeze, because you don't pursue a case just because you can win. You want to make sure it's going to be a good experience and that the client recovers something. If you end up spending more than the client recovers, at some point you have to make a business decision that this isn't the best interest of this client.
At the injuries, it's something I always tell clients, it's never bad news to hear your injuries aren't bad enough in one case.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, I just want to clarify one thing.
But that's the okay, Taylor. That's the old. I got good news and I got bad news.
Yes.
Good news is you're recovering. The bad news is it's not great for your case.
Not great. Yep, exactly.
And for a work comp case, Taylor, just for the listeners, it's a no fault situation, right? In other words,
correct. We don't have to prove negligence, like I said earlier. So if that garage door comes down on you and it was a faulty product, but the injuries aren't sufficient enough to warrant, pursuing a product liability case, it's absolutely makes sense to pursue the comp case because we don't have to show anyone's at fault. We just have to show you were at work and got hurt.
Right, exactly. So you could have accidentally hit yourself with the beater and broke your hand. As long as it was an accident, workers' comp is available. I think about these types of cases, and Sean, you mentioned something interesting. We had an iron worker years ago who had a workers' comp case. It's really interesting that you just brought that up. This guy, I'll never forget it. I get the call from the business manager and he says, this person has a work comp case. He's on work comp, but he's emotionally distraught. His work comp attorney has already tried to get him a third party attorney, couldn't get it. He thought it was because it was medical malpractice. That there was some kind of situation. I mean, not medical malpractice. There was an element of med mal. I forget exactly what it was, but here's what it was. He was getting surgery, and the surgeon, because of the work injury, and the surgeons left something in him or messed up. He couldn't get a medical malpractice attorney to take the case. He thought it was because the doctor was so big and it was a legendary doctor, right?
Yeah.
He was distraught. Finally, I got a med mal guy who he didn't buy it at first because his work comp attorney who said, and he did it as a favor. He probably has a case, Joe. But everything you just said, Sean, nobody wants to put him through 3 years of craziness for no recovery.
Yeah, you have to listen. I hate to ever tell somebody that we have to make business decisions, right? But at the end of the day, you have to do what's good for your law firm when you run a business, but you also have to do what's good for that person. And at the end of the day, you can't take every case, you can't help every person, and you have to make a business decision as to what is going to be a good use of their time and make sure that that client is going to have a good experience. Because you could be the best lawyer in the world. You could pursue that case. And if they don't get anything out of it and they don't walk away with something, they're going to be like, what was this all for? Yeah. Why did you put me through depositions? Why did you make me testify? Why did you spend no one's going to be happy with the outcome of that case. It's kind of like the conversation I have to have with some clients that are tragically injured and they find out that the person that hit them has $15,000 in coverage. It stinks. It's just, and if you drive in the Philadelphia area, the statistics show that 1 in 3 drivers either has a minimum policy or no policy at all. So it's a conversation we have to have all too frequently for our auto accident lawyers in the firm that are doing that type of work. It's sometimes it's really tough to swallow because on the basis of, from a principle of justice, you think that I got hurt, it wasn't my fault, someone should pay. And sometimes that someone doesn't have insurance. Sometimes that person doesn't have sufficient assets to go after. Not that we go after assets here, but it's listen, it's kind of like I tell my kid, life's not fair, and that's just where you are sometimes.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that real quick, Taylor. What happens if an employer doesn't have workers' comp insurance and somebody?
By law, they're required to have it, but there are times where employers in Pennsylvania don't think they're an employer or they just don't have workers' comp insurance. There is a fund that was set up through the Workers' Compensation Act called the Uninsured Employers Guarantee Fund. So if an employer doesn't have insurance, you can still bring a workers' compensation claim. You just have to put the uninsured employers guarantee funds, or the UEGF, put them on notice and file against them, and you can get a recovery through the UEGF.
Additionally, you can potentially sue them I can go after them then too.
They can also be held criminally liable.
Yeah. Yeah, we could, Joe. So sometimes when you have a comp claim, you generally can't sue your client, your employer separately outside of the workers' comp world. But if they don't have comp insurance and they're just trying to play some games, I could potentially pursue a claim against them directly, and they can't assert what we call the comp bar, or the employer defense to get out of the case. So they can't rely upon the Workers' Compensation Act to protect them. It's not a shield and a sword. They can't, if they don't have the coverage, they can't assert the defense.
So you mentioned auto accidents and the insurance. And Sean, you and I have talked about this many times, and I know, Taylor, you represent a ton of people that have been injured while working and driving for a living. Let's kind of combine that situation, okay? Somebody is driving for a living, okay, and they get hit by an individual who has minimal insurance. Sean, let's talk about that. In other words, the standard auto case where two people are not working, okay, and there's an accident is one thing. What are there different dynamics when somebody's driving for a living, besides the fact that they will likely get workers' comp if that other person has minimal insurance, but the company has a decent amount of insurance? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a couple of factors at play. One, say somebody comes to me and they were, driving a truck for their employer, they're the delivery guy, they're whatever it is. That's your scenario. A lot of times we run into the problem of they don't want to involve comp at all. I could think we had probably 3 cases that we've referred to Taylor's firm in the past week where the client wants to, I only want to pursue the claim against the other driver. I don't want to involve comp, and I have to gently remind them, this is not your choice. Okay? If you were hurt on the job, I need somebody to pay your medical bills. And your auto insurance is not going to do that as soon as they find out you had been working at the time of the thing. So it's like you can't have it both ways. And I'm like, you need to get to Taylor and his firm and open the claim. You might not be out of work, but at least your medical expenses will have to be paid and covered, and you have to go through the process. Well, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, I can't help you then, because you have to work within the confines of a system. And this is the way the system was designed to do. When you're hurt at work, whether it's in a construction accident, whether it's at the Dietz and Watson plant, or whether it is driving your car for work, or even an employer's car, you have to play by the rules. And the rules say your medical bills, and to the extent you're out of work, your wages are covered by your employer's workers' comp plan. And that's just the system.
Yeah. I'll bring up a point that's something like, see, I'm going to take a shot at this one, Sean. But,
oh, boy, this is going to be the dangerous part of the segment, Taylor. When Joe starts taking shots, we know we're done.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting point. So you'd have to lie about what happened. So I had another iron worker buddy. He wasn't a buddy of mine. So we'll get guys calling, because that's my union. You guys know that. And so they'll call the hall, and we're advocates. So we don't give, obviously, legal advice or anything like that. But I don't have a problem talking to somebody as a friend when they say, I got injured and I don't want it. Same what you just said, Sean. This particular guy had been working for this company for 2 weeks. Now, as you guys know, especially when you're iron workers and a lot of building tradesmen, you could be on a job for 2 days or 5 years. Okay, you get on the Frankfurt L job, you're not going to be there for a while, right? but you're also working for big employees and small employees, whatever. So this guy's on this job for 10 days. He gets injured. And he calls the holiday call. He calls me. This was years ago. And one thing leads to another. And he says, I don't want to, just like Sean said, I don't want to mess with workers' comp. I'm like, well, I can't tell you what to do, but you got to have to tell somebody how you got hurt, right? And you're going to be frauding somebody, I got hurt at home. Well, that's your insurance. And that's how conscientious he didn't want to make waves, right? They talk about injured workers faking it, right? These guys are faking it so they don't have to tell on the work comp provider, right? But they don't ever say that. But at the end of the day, that's, once you do that, the consequences, it's short.
Number one rule is to be honest. There's that's what the insurance is for. They have workers' comp insurance if you do get hurt. Same reason people get car insurance or health insurance. If an issue arises, that's what it's for. So even if you get hurt and you can work, they're still responsible to pay for your medical bills. And in order to pursue the third party case, someone's got to be paying your bills, like Sean said. That's what workers' comp is for.
And Sean, when you have a catastrophic injury and there's a workers' compensation element to it, I know there's subrogation issues, and you never want anybody to get hurt, but that can be beneficial because you guys, as great a firm as you guys are, that not often is the insurance company diving for cover and just paying the bill that immediately is settling 2 days in. Sometimes cases take some time, and that workers' compensation element, which is a wage replacement type situation, has to be something that is at least heartwarming and makes you that your client is able to pay their bills during the third party element of the case.
Yeah, Joe. So you said a bunch of things in there. I'm going to try to unpack some of that.
Well, whoa.
Because you described a unicorn, which is the case settles right away and I make lots of money, which that would be sweet, but that doesn't work that way. And then talk about like fancy words like subrogation. What does that mean, Joe?
Guys,
listen,
I'll educate you guys later on that.
I know you are super sophisticated, but what people don't often understand, I'm going to kind of address that first and then kind of come back to the challenges that are posed in every case. There's no matter if somebody tells me they have a perfect case, I know they're lying or deliberately just don't understand the system, because there's nothing that's perfect in any case.
Sure.
But subrogation is a concept of this. If you have both of those cases, say you get hurt while working, but you also have somebody else to go after, people hate this part of it when they're hurt because they get their wages paid, they get their medical expenses covered, but what workers' comp giveth, they taketh back. So they think of it like a short-term loan towards the case. Now, if you get hurt and there's no one else to go after, you keep that. Your medical expenses are paid. So the system is designed to not shift the burden onto that employer, okay, if there is somebody else to go after. So if you go for workers' compensation and get medical expenses and the grand total of your medical expenses and your wages, say total about $100,000, okay, and I have a case that I consider that $100,000 my lien against the case. Clients don't want to hear that they have to pay back comp, but it's not a choice. Much like pursuing a comp claim in the first place, it's not a choice. These are not choice. But with the key for us, and I know Taylor's firm does a great job on this, is educating the client early on that these are non-negotiables. We can't avoid repayment, and they basically get back. They don't get back dollar for dollar, but they can get back whatever that amount is, less a proportionate share of your attorney's fees and expenses. So if I'm charging a third for the work I'm doing on the third party case and we spend $5-10 in expenses, the comp carrier has to reduce by a proportionate share of those expenses and that third. So basically they generally somewhere get around 60% back of what they paid. So in that context, that example, They paid about 100 grand in medicals and indemnity benefits, which are wage benefits. They get about 60 grand back. It's not dollar for dollar, but that's the first part of that equation. And clients really need to understand when they have a situation that involves both workers' comp and third party, that what you get, you're going to have to give back, no matter how painful and awful and unjust that feels to you. Because of all the other situations where there is no one to go after, the comp carrier has to eat that. And next time I hear somebody say, "Oh, my employer doesn't want to help the third party lawyer," I'm like, why?
Yeah,
I'm your best friend. I am the one keeping your comp rate down. You want me to hunt for somebody else because your comp rate, the amount that you pay, and Taylor and I pay as business owners, if we are paying out workers' comp claims for our own employees, our rate goes up. You think the insurance company is going to just willingly bring that down? No, but we don't want our comp rating as a contractor or a business to stay up. No, I want to basically recover that money whenever possible. So I always say, if an employer is like, they don't want to work with me, I'm like, you are foolish and don't know how the game works.
Taylor, address that if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when there's a third party component that you have a good defense attorney on the comp case, they're fine, settling a case or paying out money on it because they're going to look great to their client by getting the money back through the subrogation, like Sean explained. I mean, in that scenario, you're kind of working together with the defense attorney to get the best result for the injured worker, because on the third party case, they're going to get that money back.
Well, Mike, and what is that dynamic like? When do you ever get a call from a defense attorney to work together on, on that, that part of it?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of times when someone's on workers' comp, they're receiving checks, and then the insurance company files a termination petition to stop their benefits. If we can get the case, and there's a third party case in this scenario, if we can get the case settled rather than getting that termination petition, a decision on that, it's beneficial for all parties. Because if a termination petition happens, they're deemed fully recovered, that can negatively impact the third party lawsuit. But if we settle the case without an opinion of full recovery, whatever we settle for, whatever they paid out in workers' comp indemnity benefits, the lump sum settlement, as well as the medical bills, they'll get back, the workers' comp insurance carrier will get back from the third party case through the subrogation. So in that scenario, a defense attorney is more willing to settle the case rather than take it to decision.
And guys, talk about the obviously the importance of obviously the stereotypical complaint about attorneys is communications and all those things. Joe,
can I jump in on that communication thing? Because I wanted to switch gears a little bit, if that's okay. And Taylor, one thing that I appreciate about your firm is the level of communication that our firms have back and forth to one another, and how that then translates to your clients, and how you guys go about really taking care of that communication. And I think this is what, in today's day and age, one, clients expect, and two, it's what culture at a firm needs to be built around. So maybe you can touch about a little bit about how you guys go about at Stern Cohen, really making sure that communication with our clients remains exceptional. And then two, how you've built a culture around that and other core values at your shop.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first, the communication with the other attorneys on the case, for example, the personal injury attorney or the third party attorney, keeping them up to date with the records we're getting. Hey, if we're settling the case, why don't we always send the settlement agreement? Take a look at this, make sure there's nothing that needs to come out. But with the clients, I mean, communication is key. I always say, we work for them. That goes to the culture of the firm. I'm always preaching that. At the top of the show, you mentioned, a lot of lawyers in our space are, figureheads and on the billboards, but Dave and I, we're the ones litigating the cases. We're talking to the clients. So, if you call and you're represented by me, you're going to talk to me. We have busy schedules, litigation events throughout the day. But if you call my office and ask to speak with me, you're going to get on my calendar, and you're going to talk to me. So we always tell, the staff, we work for these clients and they're dealing with something that to them is the biggest thing going on in their life. You know, in workers' comp, a lot of these people are out of work without an income. I mean, could you imagine going 6 to 9 months without money coming in?
No.
So while, yeah, they're frustrated and they're calling, you know, multiple times a week, have some empathy, think what they're going through. You know, some of these people are living paycheck to paycheck and they're going to go almost a year without any money coming in. This is huge for them. So talking to a lawyer, even if I don't, you know, there's no update for them, you know, we're moving along. Just hearing their lawyer's voice rather than a staff member makes all the difference in the world to me.
Yeah, that classic no update is critical.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's just that reassurance, hearing the voice. And even if it's not your voice, it's sometimes technology pushing out messages, making sure that they stay connected and feel like they are the worst thing we could do as lawyers and law firms is keep our clients feeling in the dark, right? And even if it's that no update, we have it kind of down to a system at our firm to do that. Now, one of the things that I've been really impressed about with your firm is just the massive growth you guys have really had in, say, the past 5 years. Did I read that right? You guys are up to about 11 lawyers now?
Yeah, no, we opened in January 2020. So, you know, we're 2026. It started with just Dave and I, literally the only two people. Now we've got about 10 lawyers looking to hire more. Hiring's really hard right now. If anyone wants a job, that's a young attorney, please call Stern Cohen.
I'll take it, Taylor. Now,
Joe, you muted yourself, which is always a good thing. I'm willing to allow you to mute yourself anytime you want.
I just said I'll take the job. Okay. Yeah. I went to Iron Workers Apprentice School. And
Joe, you are unhireable.
I went to community college for half a semester.
Perfect.
Where do I start?
Well, Joe, you know, listen, they only have D1 athletes at their firm at the top, so you can't be, you know, Taylor's a D1 tennis guy, Dave's a D1 pitcher. You know, they got a D3 football player on their team too now who we gotta have a conversation about because he's a Gettysburg guy.
Swimmer at Ohio State, Katie Lachansky.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that I love about this is we're going to kick Joe out of the room. You know, I've always been a proponent of
hold on.
hiring athletes.
You have any bass guitar players on your staff?
Bass guitar players.
All right, I start tomorrow.
Listen, I don't know if you're reliable enough. I haven't seen you play. But one of the things that I've always loved to be surrounded by is the athlete's mindset. Yes. And one of the things that I think you guys have done a really nice job on is surrounding yourself with people that are hard chargers, people that have pushed through. Because the thing that lawyers, TV and sometimes reality, you know, are vastly different about the how much we have to shovel on a daily basis, right? There's about 5% of the wins, and they feel great when they happen. But every day we have to wake up and kind of do the work. And I always found that, like, surrounding myself with athletes really, does a great thing, whether they're a paralegal or a lawyer. And, maybe you guys can talk about, you know, some of the qualities you look for in people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing up in sports and then, you know, playing sports at a high level, a collegiate level, you're working with other people on the team. And you also have that competitive drive. You know, the legal field, especially, you know, the area of law that we're in, is competitive. But you also have to be able to work with the team. So, you know, finding people that aren't afraid to do the work, that, you know, like to win, you know, they're motivated by winning. That was something we when we first started, we were looking for people who were athletes, you know, because we know they're not afraid to put in the work and they're motivated by that competitive edge. You know, they're looking to compete. They're looking to win.
Yeah, you got to work while no one's watching, man. That's what it is.
It's interesting. I don't know, Taylor. I don't know if you saw this, but my wife and I watched last night it was on one of the cable or the streaming channons. The Chris Everett and Martina.
Oh yeah, my mother watched
the specialty. Well, and I can tell you, it's one of the great rivalries in the history of sports. But both of them have cancer.
Yes.
Okay? And they're fighting it. And they both talked about have, utilizing those, like Sean said, intangibles that you, as athletes, and so digging down and, they have,
Joe, you see it right over my shoulder?
yeah,
Right.
Sign on that wall.
yeah,
It is
yeah,
the most, it says the word grit for those listening to us on the radio or, on Spotify later when we drop this thing. I have a sign. I have three things on my wall. Right behind me. I have right in the middle is the word grit, because I think it is the most intangible quality to lead to success in life.
yeah,
And I think, having that internal fortitude to push through when things don't go your way, because I will tell you, and this is why I loved coaching baseball those years. It's a sport that is literal failure. Dave will tell you, competing, like you're in the Hall of Fame if you failed 2 out of 3 times. And so you're going to see more failure in life than you care to admit, care to post on Instagram, and whatever it might be. So having that intestinal fortitude to really be able to withstand it, critically important. And obviously on the back I have, Liberty Bell and my signed jersey by Rudy Rudiger.
nice.
As a small college football player, I kind of had a little Rudy in me.
So, and it really interesting you bring up baseball, because we all obviously on this broadcast we all love it, but what's interesting about it, the other night the Phils were up 5-0, right? And now last week was an amazing 3 games in a row down. But you got
NOLA'd. As I like to call it, we got NOLA'd. In soccer, when they put the ball between the other guy's legs, what do they call it? Nutmeg.
Yep.
I'm all into FIFA now. I'm not gonna stay away from this now. But we got NOLA'd the other night, which is kind of a recurring thing.
Yeah, it's terrible. He's that contract is going to bite. But having said that, though, like you said, Sean, failure in that game is. I wonder sometimes. I really wonder when you talk about baseball and when you've had athletes at both your levels, okay, who have had success. And let's throw, a high school athlete in there, right? It dawned on me. Every one of those guys playing Major League Baseball hit 450 or 500 when they were in high school.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe higher. Okay. How many of them just couldn't deal with hitting 250? And now you're in the All-Star game. And therefore, it's almost like being in your worlds right now. How many guys that are lawyers were the smartest guy or girl in the room, and now obviously you're at a different level, and dealing with you guys are successful. You have won most of your lives, including with the law, but being able to, and you look at the baseball analogy, we were up by 5 runs and we got NOLA'd. And now we lost the game. Oh, and by the way, none of us on this broadcast had to play another game 12 hours later. You got to flush it and move. All those things, the performance and the not quitting and the teamwork, that it falls right into the comparison between sports and the law. Sean.
Yeah, listen, you and I have had this conversation countless times about the importance of being able to look past what happened in the past and having what do they say, like kind of have the goldfish mentality, just kind of keep swimming, man, keep doing the work and doing that. And I think that's the old Ted Lasso line about be a goldfish and just kind of keep doing it and have a short-term memory. Listen, you want to learn from your failures, right? You want to kind of analyze and move on as to how we could continue to get better. And listen, I know we're getting quickly close to our time today, so I'm gonna give Taylor kind of the platform to kind of talk about that in his own experience and how they kind of embrace, I always say it's like embracing the suck, because there's going to be parts of the day that stink and are not good. And, and it's, listen, you get up and do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think keeping at the forefront of your mind that you're working for a client whose situation is a lot tougher than what you're dealing with in that moment. That is the suck that you're dealing with. So I went to Clemson my freshman year before I transferred to Penn State, and the coach left, but the coach who was there, who recruited me, always said, you got to get gritty. And, that stuck with me since then. Whatever's going on, it might suck, but you got to deal with it and figure out a way around it. In tennis, another thing he would say is you got to hit one more good ball. So in the law, you do the next thing right. Obviously, we want to learn from our mistakes, so you analyze that, you see what you did wrong, but hit another good ball, do another good thing. And if you keep at the forefront of your mind the client, why you're doing this, what you're doing it for, it's a lot easier to deal with this stuff, right? Because when you get to make that phone call about the result you receive, it's one of the best feelings in the
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, Sean, jump on that.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's the stuff it's that handwritten note. It's that hug you get from your client. That's a lot of our whys as to why we do those things. But to shift gears on things that don't suck, and that is FIFA World Cup. I'm just going to hit it real quick, and the MLB All-Star Game. So end up on this. Listen, I was a high school student when FIFA came for the last World Cup, and a poor one at that. So I didn't get to go to any of those games.
Who are you picking? Who are you picking to win?
I mean, listen, I think France has the best chance of winning. I think they have the best pathway to win. And my son's a huge Mbappe fan, and to the point where yesterday we were up in MetLife and went to see France play Sweden. I've caught the bug. We went to Ghana, Croatia on Saturday in Philly, and listen, I might just bite the bullet and go see France, Paraguay in Philly on next Tuesday. So or next Wednesday, whatever it is, because I'm now this crazy when it comes to it. But if it's cheaper, maybe I'll fly to Atlanta and go sit in a dome somewhere, because the two games I went to was raining in Philly and hotter than the seven depths of hell in MetLife the other day. So listen, I caught the bug. I'm excited. The good news is, we have a lot of awesome things, and I'm super excited. My favorite part every year of the baseball season is the home run derby, and I don't know if we're going to get Schwarber or Harper in it. It's going to be one of them, and I hope that they hit 100 home runs, and it's awesome.
I could tell you this: Dombrowski talking about Harper not being not
elite.
Yeah,
he's not elite.
Yeah, right. He's not elite.
And listen,
he's eating his words.
We haven't talked about this enough, though. But kudos to Donnie Baseball and what he has brought to this team, and done a remarkable job. We're 10 games down, in the loss column, and to bring us to where we are. And listen, Donnie Baseball was my favorite player growing up. I grew up in North Jersey. I love Donnie Baseball. He was my favorite. He was my childhood idol as a player, and the fact that he now coaches my favorite team in baseball.
Yeah.
It's literally my universe has collided. But Joe, I know we're tight on time. I want to give Taylor an opportunity. Taylor, how can people reach you? Whether there are potential clients or folks, other lawyers out there that maybe want to get up with you guys. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can call us 215-999-1443 or go to our website, sterncohenlaw.com. It's a free consultation. Even if you just have questions about your situation, just give us a call or go on the website. We're happy to help and answer whatever questions you might have. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun.
Sean, your contact information?
Yeah, listen, you can, as Taylor and Dave say on their website, Google us. We win, right? I love it. I like that they played into the Indiana coach.
Yes.
Billboards. I'm a Signetti fan, and you guys played right into it. I loved it. I would have been remiss if I didn't talk about that billboard. But yeah, listen, you can Google Taylor Cohen, you can Google Sean Quinn, you're going to find us. But we're at QuinnLawyers.com. Friends out there that are on LinkedIn or whatever, just I'm a big LinkedIn guy, so you can get me there, and you can always email me directly, Sean at QuinnLawyers.com.
Awesome. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Top Lawyer with Sean Quinn. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Taylor Cohen of Stern Cohen. And, of course, on behalf of Sean Quinn and Taylor Cohen, and a shout-out to TJ, our producer, I'm Joe Doherty. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Great show.
Thanks, guys.